got an exciting episode live to do with you all tonight because, we want to answer the question, is it a good time or a bad time to buy a vehicle? So Marie, why don't you tell everyone here what we're going to be talking about tonight, and I'll get the nice slides going.
Yeah, tonight we'll talk about the future for trucks. We'll talk also about the market now and how to save thousands on a Ford. Will be fun to speak about it. And we'll finish with the scheduling notes.
Yeah, so the title, Don't Buy a Vehicle Now. WTD, what the data? Because we've got all sorts of YouTube channels again this week and the last weeks raking in hundreds of thousands of views, sometimes millions of views, saying don't buy a vehicle right now. You'd have to be crazy. And my answer to that is what the data? Because that's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to actually look at the data to answer whether it's a buyer's or a seller's market right now. But first, before we get into the main topic for the evening, let's cover future of trucks. That means Ford Maverick future, Bronco future, that whole new segment that this one here has created, that small, fun truck segment, fuel efficient truck segment. Now this thing can still work pretty hard, 1,500 pounds of payload, up to 4,000 pounds of towing. And we've got some possible competition on the way. So let's just go check that out right now. You can check this out over at Car Scoops, Car Buzz, Motor Biscuit, but right here for this time, we'll look at Car Scoops for a moment. Now they've done a little rendering of this, and this is because Kia is going to be getting into the truck market, folks. What do you think, Marie?
I'm surprised, but at the same time, I would say it's time because they didn't have that kind of market, and I guess there's so much demand on it because everybody that's in the construction business needs a truck. So I don't know why they did it before.
Now, I'm not necessarily going to be rushing to get one of these. I will want to see many years to find out if the powertrains they offer are, good. I'm still a little burnt on the 1.6 liter from Kia and Hyundai that had some serious issues. I'm also, a little concerned.
When it's new, you need to check before.
Now, there's a couple of years where the 2 liter had some issues as well. And we're talking about major failure on a very substantial number of vehicles. And, if you have a 1.6 liter Kia and you start to hear it tick or clack, 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 it's just a question of time before it goes from clack, clack, clack to bang, bang, bang. So not good. So that's going to be part of our talk about future of trucks. We're going to be talking about new models, but also previous problems, because that's all part of the little talk. It's part of how we decide whether we're going to buy a model or not. I think it's all very important. Now, this is the bigger of the 2 trucks that Kia plans to offer. Now, this is just a rendering. So we'll get a bigger one, most likely based off the Telluride platform. And we'll get a smaller one, and it's probably going to be based off the Santa Cruz platform.
So it's the same size as the Maverick to be the competition.
Yes, Maverick will likely have some competition somewhere either 2025 or 2026, maybe, and being announced 24 or 25 for an arrival of either 2025 or 2026. And I think if we ask you what you think about this, Kia, no matter what they do, you'll be probably happier with it than the Santa Cruz.
With the Kia?
Yes, styling-wise.
I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah, styling-wise, maybe. If it stays like that, because I know it's only a model that they show, but it won't come out like that. But for now, I love that it's big, but I'm not sure about the lights. It looks like a Rivian. In the front, so no, I'm not sure about the look. The futuristic look, it was never mine. I will stay with Ford.
We have different renderings here. So we've got another rendering here if we check this
Yeah,
out,
it could be a lot different.
this is from Motor Biscuit, so that's their rendering of what it could look like. Now, we do have to remember that the two trucks they offer could look very different because, yes, Santa Cruz, Rev Nation, I hear you, Santa Cruz styling is awful for some. I really liked the interior other than too much gloss. Dark black and gloss means for a lot of fingerprints, so my need to have a clean vehicle interior just drove me absolutely crazy. But the rest, it felt very high-end and luxurious, actually, the Santa Cruz. Now, the outside, I grew up playing Zelda, so I really love the Triforce triangles all over the place. I've said it on the channel before. I'm just happy that Hyundai tried their own styling. So it's different, and I'm okay with that. Is it the truck I want?
Fits well with the rest of the line of Hyundai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
that's their color.
I think it's a good-looking truck if you're not really looking for a truck styling. You know, if you just want something that doesn't look like anything else, just like how traditionally the Honda Ridgeline appealed to people. It appealed to people who didn't want a truck but needed a truck and didn't want it to look like a truck but still needed the practicality of a truck. Well, they'd go out and get a Ridgeline, and then real truck people would make fun of the Ridgeline, and they were fine. They're like, you know, I've got my own styling. I don't want a truck, but I have to have one, so this is, you know, my in-between. They're kind of when you have to settle for a truck but don't want a truck. I think I don't understand that aspect. I think having a truck is great. I think it's like, you know, Screaming Eagles, full out freedom and liberty. Being able to purchase a big truck it's special. You know, if you go to Europe, good luck trying to have a big truck with a big engine. You have to be a millionaire because they'll just tax you to, well, not to death because, you know, if you're wealthy enough, you won't be taxed to death. If you're not wealthy enough and you keep the vehicle instead of eating, well then, yes, theoretically, they could tax you to death if you don't buy food, but you continue to make your car payment. But these days, there are higher rates of people not making their car payments. And that's unfortunate. And we'll get to that in episode 2 when we actually talk about what's going on in the automobile market, but just overall the financial market, the health of the economy. And a lot of whether it's a buyer or seller's market, if we go back to the very first slide here, our thumbnail, whether it's a buyer or seller's market is all about the economy. And I think a lot of people forget that, you know, back in 2021 where dealers were having these increased prices. Well, that was possible because the economy was very strong and you had very high demand for comparatively very low supply. So that drove up prices. And if the dealers wouldn't have driven up prices, well then rebuyers are really kind of scalpers, the same way that, you know, Taylor Swift tickets get horrendously scalped. Taylor Swift is very happy saying that she has tickets for $100 and her tickets are incredibly unaffordable. Well, the problem is by having those unbelievably artificially low prices that is way, way, way below actual demand, well, the problem is scalpers buy up all the tickets and then sell them at a much higher price. And because they control the overall flow, well, they can increase the prices even more. So they could have probably pushed out the scalpers if they just sold the tickets higher. That's what actually that's what manufacturers did. They raised prices, making it no longer possible for dealers to increase those prices. So future of trucks. Well, we'll get to really pricing future in episode 2, but let's just continue to talk about the fun stuff. What are they going to look like? We've got a little spy photo here of an actual Kia out on the road. You've got, you know, so it's going to almost certainly be, that looks like LED lights to me. So we can have an idea of the light design, even the grille design. It's going to look like it's going to have an open face grille and 2 sizes, Maverick size, as well as if it's off the Telluride platform, that's going to be probably mid-size pickup truck, Ford Ranger Tacoma competitor. And I don't mention the Colorado, I'm mentioning the global markets. The Ford Ranger is a global vehicle, the Tacoma is a global vehicle. Now we'll have Kia offering probably 2 global vehicles, one that's going to be a lower price point to bring people into the truck world, the way the Maverick is. and then another one to make profit.
And I guess it's easier for them to start with smaller truck. If they go too big, maybe they will have trouble with the tow and stuff like that. So maybe
towing.
It's better to start small, and when they are able to do a truck, they will be bigger, like
and
F-150.
Yeah, and the competition, if they try to compete with the F-150, quite honestly, they're gonna have to pour,
That's hard. Compete with F-150.
When the Ford Ranger in 2011 got, when they chose to take it off the market, it's because they needed and wanted to put at least $8 billion into the F-150. They were saying the Ranger needed $8 billion, and if I recall my numbers correctly, the F-150, they poured $11 billion into the F-150, so they couldn't pour the proper amount into each vehicle, and they didn't want to split the pot in two. They really want to pour, in 2011, so much money into the F-150 that it would just, kind of be unbeatable. And sales-wise, it's been unbeatable, world's most sold vehicle. I don't think Kia, right up to the bat, can make a vehicle where the frame is going to compete with Ford's, steel frame, and actually they have high-strength steel. It's steel mixed with bore. So it's a high-strength steel. It's ladder based with 8 cross members. 5 of those are welded. They go through the frame, welded on each side. So they're through frame cross members, transversal supports. So payload going up to 2,900. You can have a 4-door F-150 with a 6.5-foot box that has a payload of 2,564 pounds. That's pretty much more than the F-250 or the 2,500 diesels on the market have payloads of 17, 18, sometimes 1,900 pounds. So it's beating out 2,500s, the F-150. Can tow 14,000 pounds with an F-150. Kia's not going to be able to, first off the bat, be able to compete with that. And I'm not going to be rushing to get one of these unless they pull out some hat trick and pull out a motor that has been already proven to be very, very reliable. And to compete, very powerful. The Ford Ranger has the 2.7 liter V6 twin turbo, which in an F-150 has a world of power, has an great fuel economy for a truck. I don't know what Kia, maybe they'll recycle, they'll retool, reprogram, and redo the internals on the motor from the Stinger, the Kia Stinger, because it's a powerful 6. So they could produce something very exciting, and I hope they do, because if they do, and a lot of sales go towards there, it'll force prices down. The competition is good. If Kia comes out with a fantastic interior, it's going to push Ford, Dodge, and GM and Toyota to come up with a better... actually, I'm very impressed with Toyota's new interior. I'm very impressed with Ford's current interior. Dodge, the Ram, has a great interior. Not my favorite truck, but...
I will be curious to see if they sell more than the Hyundai Santa Cruz.
If it looks like that, I think they will.
Not sure.
You're
I'm
not a fan?
sure at all.
You're going to say it looks like a fish.
At the same time, when we look on the side, it really looks like a Santa Cruz when you just check the side.
Well, the fenders.
That's curious.
Same fenders, same plastic fenders here.
Yeah.
Styling.
It don't have triangles, but yeah, it's the same form. No, I hope it won't look like that.
You got the back here, the back window, the styling wise. Okay, I can say that looks good, but I've sat in the back seat of the Santa Cruz and I found that was a downside. It's claustrophobic in the back seat, and they're not helping things by having this line go up. Yes, it gives it a really sporty look, but people want a small, affordable, people want an affordable truck, and they're willing to take a smaller truck in order to have an affordable truck. And people want to have good fuel economy, which if it forces them a smaller truck, that's what they're going to go for. Remember, the F-150 Lightning had hundreds of thousands of reservations, and now those reservations aren't so much turning into a good portion of them aren't turning into sales because they don't have readily available, the Pro model. That original Pro model at its original price really showed us that hundreds of thousands of people want a truck, that the monthly payment is very affordable, and that you put no fuel into it or have very low fuel costs. That's why we've seen it with the Ford Maverick. 70% about 70% of Maverick, people who want a Maverick, 70% of them roughly want your model, the hybrid. Now, how have you found your hybrid experience?
That's why we waited for so long. Everybody wants a hybrid, but it's worth the wait, definitely, because I really love my Maverick. It helped me economize the fuel, and when I'm stuck, because I'm only doing city road to go to work, so when I'm stuck in the traffic, I'm happy now because I don't spend any fuel. I see it's electric. And then I can wait. I'm not...
5 liters per 100 kilometers now that the cold Canadian winter is no longer biting at your buttocks.
Buttocks?
It's a polite word for your posterior.
Okay. I only knew the buttocks that you inject in your face. I was like, which buttocks?
That is Botox.
Oh, okay.
Whereas I said buttocks.
Buttocks. Oh, sorry.
Because I didn't
see
want to
the
swear.
difference.
I feel there's no need to swear.
And you know what? Jumbie Mainstroke, has the right word for the Kia truck. It looks like a smoother Santa Cruz.
A smoother Santa Cruz.
Totally
yes.
true.
And
undressed Santa Cruz.
I kind of feel like I prefer Kia over Hyundai. And I know, Hyundai is supposed to be sort of a little more high end, but I just prefer the styling from Kia. I like the styling of the Kia Stinger. I like the styling of the Telluride.
Yeah, when they came with the Telluride, they changed a lot.
I really
the
like the
model
styling.
Yeah. A good improvement.
And the Kia Stinger, I thought long and hard whether I'd buy one. And had we known back then we were having a kid, I would have been like, oh, it's kind of like a 4-door Mustang. Yeah, but, whatever. Shelby, it's a family.
We don't need it.
Yeah, no. What we
car.
need is a Ford Mustang, Shelby GT350, because there's a back seat that a baby seat can go into.
You sure about that?
We clearly need a
Bronco.
Bronco. Clearly can't have a Bronco because of the depreciation off the F-150 Lightning.
I saw at the beginning of the chat a joke about a minivan. I told you it will never happen to us.
Never.
Anyway, Ford doesn't have a minivan, so we're good. Problem solved.
Now, so continuing to talk about the future of trucks. Let's kind of switch this into what we'll call episode 2. So do you know what's coming right now?
Yeah, episode 2 would talk about the market.
Actually, we're going to throw that on to episode 3. So it's good that you give a little trailer to it. But episode 2, we're going to talk about specifically the Ford Maverick. So to wrap things up, I look forward to Kia I really do look forward to Kia having 2 trucks available. I think it's going to help drive down prices, cool prices, and they're not going to get driven down so much as just slow down their rate of increasing. But Kia is talking about 2 EVs, that their 2 added trucks are going to be EVs. And really what that means is probably a hybrid and quite possibly a full electric. Now, Shelby, we have talked to Shelby as a baby name before. It's on the list, but I don't think it passes with Mahi. Yeah, we probably, and actually, one of my coworkers and good friend actually named his dog Shelby, so he took it before we could. Now, let's get over to that Maverick news. Okay, so Ford Maverick news. Let's see where we can start here. Got a lot to cover on it. Yeah, here we go. Let's sort of reduce this. You'll have to cut this out when we do during the week. We like to kind of condense and give a short form of what's going on with our different episodes. So we turn the live into episodes for those that don't want to hang out with us, with the whole community here for a half hour to an hour and a half, and that's fine. But we do like to break up the show so that everyone can enjoy the material and the information. It's important to get the data and the information out. We want the right information out there, so we do break the episode up in during the week, and then I always try to produce one extra episode, which is sort of like a live action. We go out and test drive a vehicle, or we do a how-to video or an important car care video. So let's start up with our Ford Maverick information here. Let's try to get it down to one slide. So first of all, to recap last week's episode, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the individual that went on Maverick Truck Club, Sir Slayer, and gave the information on how his EcoBoost caught fire. So a bit of a little talk about the future of trucks, but specific to the Ford Maverick. I'm not going to be surprised whatsoever if a recall comes out on the EcoBoost engines. So we did have, so far it's one EcoBoost that's caught fire. If it's just one, it's going to stay that way. But do have a bit of a recall for 2015 to 2019 Lincoln MKCs, and that's an EcoBoost engine, and it is involving fires. So a recall on the Maverick could very well come out. I'm very curious to see what the solution is going to be, but I highly suspect it's going to be something very small, such as a gasket. I mentioned that in last week's episode. And if it's not a gasket, well, there could theoretically be something in the motor. We saw it on the 50 or less 2.7 liter V6s, which we absolutely loved on our Bronco. Loved that engine. And some people said, I'm never going to buy a Bronco. And they missed out on what I think of I must have owned 80 some vehicles now. And together we must be close to 90. But I've owned so many vehicles, I've driven so many vehicles, and the Bronco is still in the top 3 vehicles that I've ever driven. And it is my favorite vehicle I've ever owned. I'm happy I didn't miss out that opportunity, because there were some valve issues with 50 or so Broncos. Now, will there be a recall on the Maverick EcoBoost engine? I'll let you all know, but being that there's one now that's official that came out last week for the 2015 to 2019 Lincoln MKC, I wouldn't be surprised. It could be something going wrong in the motor that's then causing the motor to crack and then spew out oil. But the fact that, Sir Slayer was able to drive for a while makes me think that probably good chance a bit of oil, most of the oil leaked out of the engine, and then the engine actually didn't have enough oil to properly not just lubricate itself, but also to help keep its temperatures lower. I think probably that fire was caused by very high temperatures from excess friction and wear in the motor because of the lack of the oil. And I think all of that could go back to something as simple as an oil cap. Remember, Ford assembles these motors. They're not producing all the parts for these motors. Could be a head gasket. I'll keep you all updated on that information right there. And the recall has come back for the Ford Maverick in regards to last year. There was the recall for 2.5 liter hybrid Ford Mavericks, Escapes, and Lincoln Corsairs. That's the 2.5 liter hybrid engine, and that recall is back, and we're waiting for a solution. I look forward to sharing the solution with all of you. Now, specific to the Maverick, now we've got really good news. So really good news on the Maverick is very few problems, a few recalls, between 4 and 6 overall recalls for the EcoBoost and the hybrid. Now, there was one EcoBoost that caught fire, but so far, very much an isolated case, so not a reason to not take possession of your Maverick when it comes in. Ford will take care of these things. Look how good these vehicles look, folks. Now, I want to give credit to the individual here. We've got ESPN 2006 sharing photos, really cool photos of his hybrid. So he's got a list, and you can check that out on Maverick Truck Club. I think these things look great with, you know, a lot of the accessories you got. He's got the Ford bed divider, the Ford soft bed cover rollable, and I'll try to put on our Amazon affiliates link list. So if you want to buy some of these parts and you want to encourage the channel, well, click on our links that we attach to our videos and then go do your shopping and buying. Everything's going to cost the same price, but Amazon will be forced to send us money. So jokes on the system. Why not use the system if it's there? But he also did, this is actually pretty cool. This is something new to the Maverick. You can have sort of a Mach 1 inspired
really look like
hood. So you've got black hood, flat black with orange lining going around it. Personally, I would like to see that for myself. I'd want it to be, instead of matte, I'd like the gloss.
And you cannot put it on any color. It's really with the gray, I guess, that it's beautiful, because with other colors, I'm not sure.
Well, either way, your XLTs, you know, that orange line, it fits in with that orange line right there. And tremors, I look forward to tremors actually showing up. We have yet to receive a tremor, so I don't know what's going on there. But I think a Maverick, you throw on some tires, you throw on some mags, and they look just beautiful. So I guess I'm just trying to put a positive this. These are incredibly affordable trucks. They work hard, 1,500 pounds in the bed. You got towing is, 2,000 towing on the hybrid, 4,000 pounds on the EcoBoost if you take the 4K towing. So 2,000 pounds towing, but not also 1,500 pounds in the bed. It's one or the other. And if you follow Maverick Truck Club, we know that we've got some, call them our spy photos of someone towing a Corvette with their Maverick. That clearly was not, I don't know how that, folks, don't use the vehicle the way that the specs let you use the vehicles. So really, really nice hybrid build. And I don't have a problem putting mud tires on a hybrid because, yes, it's front wheel drive only. And some people will say, well, that doesn't make sense. That should only be for 4x4s. Well, wouldn't you want more traction and more grip if you have less wheels turning? I think it makes a ton of sense to throw that on a hybrid, because if your front wheels are turning, you want that extra gripping power. But
plus, you love the look. You always want your Bronco to be Sasquatch, so this is the kind of a Sasquatch custom on the Maverick.
Yes. And speaking of the Bronco, for truck news, loving the Bronco 2.7 liter. I think the Badlands, fantastic value, but the Big Bend and the base model now coming with marine grade vinyl, and the floors being washout, so they've got a drain plug and they're rubberized. I think that's just absolutely incredible. Barely any price increase coming up for July 10th when these changes occur, and that's if you're built July 10th and after. And the Outer Banks and the Wild Track is going to come with leather. So no more tissue, no more cloth. Tissue, sorry, that's a French thing. I know in English, tissue is what you blow your nose into.
Yeah, don't blow your nose in the seats.
Now, fantastic Ford Maverick news. We've got numbers in. So Ford Maverick in May, 26,824 Ford Mavericks were made.
Wow, that's a lot. That's the biggest month of the year.
That's the biggest month since the beginning of production. So that's
April
fantastic.
Was almost, and March was almost the same, but May beats everything. That's a good news.
Sorry, 26,824 is the whole Hermosillo production. So that's with Bronco Sports. But Maverick itself, let's see, Maverick calendar year to date, they've made 43,810 Mavericks. And the Maverick monthly production, is 11,061. The Bronco Sport, 15,763. So Ford did promise to make, bring down. At first, they were making a whole lot more Bronco Sports than Mavericks. And one of the promises they made for that, as 2022 would progress and into 2023, they'd make less Bronco Sports and more Mavericks. Well, there you have it. They're making that happen. They're ramping up production, and it is the best month of production since the very beginning, all the way back to June 2021, where they only made 216 that month, and then July 150. But 11,061, fantastic numbers. It also indicates that we've got chances that a lot of people get their hybrids. So looking at it, some people have done the math over at Maverick Truck Club, and I'll try to give credit to the person that did the math here. You've got Commodore Bob saying that based on his math, 2/3 of all hybrid orders could be scheduled by the end of the model year. That means only 33% roughly would not get their Ford Maverick hybrid. But even better, that's including the current numbers that include people that are going to get kicked out. So if you haven't, if your Maverick order isn't COVP, so customer order verification, process, procedure, whatever, I forget what the P is and I always get it confused, but you've got to have, you need to have your driver's license sent over to Ford. You and your dealer need to sign the purchase or lease offer and send that over to Ford. And you also need to sign your build offer and send that over to Ford. Then Ford sends over a confirmation and the customer needs to have that signed. So there, you should be signing, 4 different documents and then you're confirmed. But the non-confirmed, and I'll tell you, there's going to be a lot of non-confirmed. A lot of these orders aren't going to be confirmed. Well, they're going to be kicked out of the way. So if your order is confirmed, and that's, sorry, I shouldn't say that's good. That's the part of this that's bad news. Some people are going to get, if they don't watch this channel, they're going to get kicked out of having their Maverick. They're going to be so mad at Ford, and it's going to be 100% their dealer's fault and 0% Ford's fault, because Ford doesn't want to build Mavericks for people that don't want those Mavericks anymore. That's what this whole order confirmation system's about, 50% of it. And the other 50% of it is Ford doesn't want to build Mavericks for dealers that when the Maverick shows up, the dealer goes, well, the market wants this vehicle more at a higher price. Like your used Maverick is worth $10,000 more than what you paid for it. Well,
Surprising.
They want to push out. They don't want to give Mavericks to the dealers that are going to try to tell, someone like Marie, well, Marie, we're sorry, but your vehicle here, we could sell it as a used vehicle with 20,000, 30,000 miles on it for $10,000 more. So, we need to increase the price by $10,000. Well, when you have done what's called the COVP process with Ford, as a dealer, you've signed and promised to sell the vehicle at Ford's price to that customer. If the customer doesn't take it at the price that, at the right Ford price, well, then if it becomes part of your inventory, well, then it's your inventory and you can do what you want with it. But Ford wants to get these Mavericks to the right people at the right price. They don't want it to show up and have the person be like, oh, I bought a Subaru 2 months ago. I heard that recently. And it's like, wow, please, you should have told me. I would have canceled your order and someone else would have got their Maverick instead. But thankfully, we call up the people on the list who've been waiting and we make a switch in the system and we, try to smooth it over with Ford and explain the whole situation to them. So great news. A lot of people are going to get their hybrids, but not everyone's going to get their hybrids. And that I predicted and called all the way back to in 2021. I thought that not everyone would get their hybrids, even those that ordered within the correct time frame. And then I was also predicting that in 2022, all the people that reordered in 2022 for a 2023, that they also wouldn't get their hybrids. I was originally saying of the 4 days that were open for sale, if you're day 1, you're pretty much guaranteed as long as you're COVP'd. Day 2 should be, but come day 3, I'm not so sure if you're a day 3, not so sure you're getting your hybrid. And if you're a day 4, you're, I was saying, sorry, but you're probably most certainly not getting a hybrid. So I later said, if you're a day 3 or day 4, highly consider switching over to an EcoBoost so that you do get built.
Jim Genoa is asking you, what's the percentage do you think will not have COVP?
I'm trying to play from memory here. No, I actually have, I think in Canada-wise, there's going to be about 40% that don't have COVP. Now, I don't know if it's going to be as high in the States because we were doing COVP only a year after. You'd already been doing COVP for a year when in Canada we got onto the whole COVP process. So we're a year behind, so dealers were slower to get on board. But let's say In the States, maybe half as much. Like here, it's a problem. When you've got about 40% not COVP, that's a major problem. But in the States, let's say because you have a year of extra experience, maybe you've got, 20% that'll lose out. And that's pure speculative guesswork. Now, production numbers for the Bronco. You know we love Broncos here, so let's head back over here. Now for the Bronco, we do have production numbers for the Bronco. So May 2023, 8,211 Broncos were made, and in 2022 that number was 9,475, so that's a decrease of 13.3%. But 2023 year to date, so that's bad news, but stick with me. I always have, the silver lining here. So far for Bronco production this year, we're at 50,124. And 2022, we're at 46,161. So that's an 8.1% increase. So for Bronco production numbers, there you have them. Broncos are being produced, and they're being produced at a higher number than they were in 2022. So very good news there for those of us that are waiting on a Bronco. Now overall production on almost every model is up. Huge decline on the Escape, because we all know, if you follow this show on a weekly basis, the Escape was held up for quite some time because of a programming issue, is what we were told. These recalls worry me a little bit, but I'll cover that more at length when we have a bit more. But Maverick, so far, if you look over to that Maverick production, May 2023, let's head over. We've got year to date. I want to cover the year to date. The percent change, 14.4% more this May than the May before for the Maverick. And year to date, this chart is a little old, must be a little older because the numbers we had are a little different, but Maverick May production was 11,061 vehicles. So very good production, and 43,810 vehicles. Now, the problem is that supply and demand is truly what, really decides price, and that's true for the stock market. That's true for wages. Everything is all about supply and demand. If you have a very, very rare skill set that's in very, very high demand, you're going to have an incredibly high paying job or business. So Maverick production, for prices to come down on Mavericks, I'm not expecting that to happen anytime soon, because production would need to go through the roof. They need to quadruple production, or demand would need to be cut by 4 times. There'd need to be 4 times less demand versus what's currently being supplied for there to be an issue, for us to be in the right frame set for prices to really come down on the Ford Maverick. So that kind of brings us to where the economy is, and the market, the auto market and the economy. So we'll cover that now. We've gone through what we needed to go through there. Let's get this started right up. Get to the correct thumbnail. So the main topic of the show tonight, auto market. Where are we at? Don't buy a vehicle now. WTD. So what the data? Buyers or sellers market. How do you feel about that title, Marie?
If we need to buy a car right now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I see the market doesn't slow down that much as we were thinking. People still buy lots of stuff, more than before the COVID. So I guess it's a special market. It wants to slow down a little, but not that much.
So I like that summary. It's a very general summary, but I like it. So WTD is what the data. You've got so many YouTube channels right now saying, don't buy a vehicle right now. They're saying avoid it at all costs. And I don't agree. I don't agree because of the data, and we're going to jump into this. We're going to cover it quickly. But, we've got some conclusions on some channels that I really like watching, but don't always agree with 100% of everything that's being said. Right now, one point that's being brought up is auctions have less vehicles. And if auctions have less vehicles,
because people buy it.
No, the conclusion was that new vehicles must not be selling. Trade-ins aren't coming in, so that if they've reversed engineered, you could say they're using logic, and that's great, but they're figuring if at the end, their end, the used dealer end, they're saying as a used dealer, they go to auctions and now they're seeing next to no vehicles at the auctions, that it must mean that there's next to no vehicles on the new end getting sold.
That's true.
And that makes sense, but it's absolutely not the case. Lots of vehicles, folks, new vehicles are getting sold. And it's because we don't have one economy. We have subsections of the economy. So you can have, and vehicles really show you the whole spectrum of the economy. So you've got, your Ferraris and your Lamborghinis at the high end, the multi-millionaires and billionaires buying those. Then you have, pickup trucks, which nowadays you have to be pretty wealthy to buy. You have to have a pretty big salary to buy a pickup truck. But those prices are driven by construction companies and the demand in construction. Heck, if construction demand gets cut and construction workers are getting laid off and there's no demand for building, truck prices are going to come down because the majority of where those trucks are going aren't going to be going there anymore. They're going to be sitting on lots. Dealers will be paying lots of interest, and prices would skyrocket down. They'd come crashing down.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's only me, but if we come back from 20 or 30 years ago, people in construction had more older pickups all scratch, and they doesn't mind to scratch it. And now they want to change trucks each year before they have too much mileage on it. So it's totally different.
It's the taxation system because, 20, 30 years ago, I'm going to say it straight up, but a lot of construction workers, I'm friends with you all, and I know you guys were all doing jobs under the table, and I know you're taking cash and not declaring it with the government, and you guys were pretty proud about this, but...
And now the deduction for the truck, too.
Now they're watched and they're paying their taxes, but they don't want to pay taxes because their dads didn't pay taxes. But they want, and they can only get away with so many under the table cash jobs. So what are they doing? They're looking for deductions. They're educated. They know, they've learned how to use the tax system to their advantage. And then they know that their vehicle is a huge tax deduction. And they want a nice vehicle to roll around with. So they're like, you know what, if the government is making it so that I can't do, 80% or 70% of my business under the table, and they're now declaring everything and potentially having to pay taxes on that revenue, what are they doing? They're willing to spend just about all sorts of money on a truck because it's a business expense. So trucks have become, that's why, folks, trucks have become so luxurious. That's the driving force behind luxurious trucks. It's what has made prices skyrocket.
Yeah, and it's not only in construction that it does that. Sometimes people have a Porsche for a car company, and it doesn't fit with what they do. Like they do laundry.
Cadillac Escalades in the States. A Cadillac Escalade, because it's so darn heavy, you can year one 100% tax deduct it. And because you can use, $100,000 of the whole cost of your Escalade as 100% deduction in tax, those things are expensive. And you've got buyers for it. So when you have demand, and anytime demand outpaces supply, prices go up. When demand comes below supply, supply's high, demand's here, guess what's going to happen? They're going to have to bring down the prices. The only way to bring down supply when you don't have demand is to bring down the price. And you bring down the price either by interest rate or by a rebate. But remember here, I think this is probably the first YouTube channel. I think we're the first YouTube channel to actually cover the history behind trucks getting so expensive. Because yes, construction workers used to drive these old trucks because they didn't want a big flashy truck, because the big flashy truck, the government would go, hey, how can you afford that truck when that truck is the price of apparently what your company makes in profit in an entire year? What's going on? And they didn't want to say, well, we're working under the table, we're taking all sorts of cash jobs and we're not declaring revenue. Now they have to declare pretty much all their revenue. So they want and can easily afford these expensive trucks because of tax deductions. So that's the future of trucks. As long as the construction economy is going well, the truck prices are going to stay high. And I'm not in a position to wish that, wishing for truck prices to come crashing down is kind of wishing for the main staple of our economy to come crashing down. Construction is a major sign of whether economy is doing well or not. When things aren't getting built, skyscrapers, houses, apartment complexes, when things aren't getting built, we saw it back in 2008. When things aren't getting built, things are tough for everybody. So we've got JM Genoa. I do think that a limited at 80K cost. Can you buy a Lightning for 80K? Yes, even in Canadian, you can buy a nice XLT Lightning for 83 Canadian, so definitely under that in US dollars. And even 510 Lariat Lightning is 93,000 Canadian, extended battery 110. So in Canadian, in US dollars, it's roughly 25% less. So 80K, you can definitely get a Lightning. Now, the title is WTD instead of WTF, but WTD is what the data. So let's cover actual data. Now, we covered a little backstory. I truly think that the reason truck prices have gone up is because construction has boosted these prices. They've demanded more luxury. They can handle, you had this huge demand for these trucks, and they can swallow these bigger payments. Back when it was mostly just farmers buying a new truck once every 20 or 30 years, well, there wasn't very much demand on trucks. And nonetheless, there was supply, so it kept prices low. And that's generally the story of whether it's a buyer or a seller's market. It's all about demand and supply. And supply has gone up a lot, folks. Production across all the companies have increased dramatically. And where are we seeing the biggest rebates? 233% increase in rebates from 1 year ago. BMW. Less construction guys aren't getting BMWs, but they've got all that extra production. The production went up. They've got extra supply. So now prices are coming down. And actually prices have compared to a year ago, rebates are higher. The MSRPs are higher, but the rebates are higher. So it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed story because some would say, hey, good thing you didn't buy a year ago. Look, rebates are so much higher now. And, rebates have generally gone up. If I were to average it out across all the manufacturers, you could say they're roughly $1,500 more than they were a year ago. But a lot of manufacturers, with the models that interest you, prices have increased by more than $1,500. But the data, do you want to just cover the data right here, Marie?
Okay, this one.
Yes.
So the job growth unexpected. That's a hard word. Job growth unexpectedly accelerated, but the unemployment rate, I don't see the word.
Unemployment rate actually rose. So very weird. Okay. You could think, isn't that contradictory? You've got job growth going up, so more jobs, but then unemployment rate is more people are unemployed. Well, that very sadly just means that the people that are working are doing more work. So there is a segment of the economy, of the population that are taking on more than one job, that are now taking on 2 or 3 jobs, because there's more jobs out there, but somehow there's more people unemployed. Well, that means some people are having multiple jobs. And it also is an indicator that unfortunately in today's market, it's legal to have these, part-time, you make a job and you don't make it 40 hours a week with benefits. You make it 35 hours a week or 30 hours a week with no benefits. You're a temporary worker that can just be fired at any time, that doesn't get dental or health. So you're very much expendable. And then you kind of have to really fight and compete for your job, maybe have 2 to get by. Well, there's more jobs, but more people unemployed. Because if you're not willing to, fight and compete, well, then you're unemployed. So that's quite unfortunate. And also a major driving force to this job growth is actually the service industry, which we all know service industry people often do have 2 or 3 different jobs. They work 20 hours at one place, 25 hours at another, and then 20 at another. So yeah, that's not great. That's not great because if we want good automobile sales and a good strong economy, you need strong individuals with freedom. And freedom means, at some point you can't just work 80 hours a week. You need to enjoy some family time. So new vehicle sales rose 23% from a year ago. But like the first statistic, there's also a little bit of convolution and contradictory notion in that. Because, well, if new vehicle sales rose, how is it that the data also shows that rebates have increased a fair amount? Rebates are going up. It is becoming a better and better time to buy. Odd. I'll let you cover the third point, then we'll get into talking about all this.
Consumer sentiment dips, but vehicle purchase plans improve from a year ago.
So, consumer sentiment dips. Means people are thinking, maybe this is a bad time to buy. But the plan to actually buy a vehicle now is better than it was a year ago. And I feel that's fair, and it also goes to show that rebates are very misleading. So if you increase the price of a vehicle by $10,000 but then throw a $4,000 rebate at people get pretty impressed by the $4,000 rebate. And that sucks. That's normal because you're not all obsessed with data, going through this every single week, going through deals and promotions every single day. I'm deals and promotions every single day at Ford for the last for 10 years now. And because I used to shop at vehicles for so much, a decade before that as well. But it's also very much about, just the day-to-day. So it's very normal that people aren't obsessed with all these numbers. And, the F-150, the Dodge Ram, the GMC, all these trucks can go up by 10 grand. But then if you've got a $4,000 rebate a year later, it seems like a good deal. But I still feel last year was an incredible time to buy. And I pushed all year saying this is a great time to buy. And YouTube was saying it was a bad time to buy. But it was a great time to buy. Now, YouTube's still saying it's a horrible time to buy because interest rates are up. But it's all sorts of contradictory information. Yes, interest rates are very high right now. But if you've got a trade, you're going to get so much more, I think, for your trade than when supply goes way up. Mm-hmm. If supply goes way up, your trade value is going to go way down. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, let's just cover the market. Let's cover the real data. We've got accelerating job growth, but as we said, unemployment going up. So more people unemployed, but there's more jobs out there. That just means a certain segment of the population is doing more jobs. They need more reliable vehicles, but because they're getting jobs with, that aren't as good. It's the service industry pushing this job growth rate. So what does that mean? It means you've got people who don't have healthcare, who don't have dental, and these are people that are going to be shopping those low-cost vehicles. But the real warning behind low-cost vehicles, they don't have, the same job security, the same safety net, because they don't have the dental and the health insurance. And what's unfortunate is they get, a double whammy of badness, because then they're forced to kind of shop. They don't have as good credit or as, stable, safe credit. So it's harder to jump into these good new or near new vehicles, vehicles that are new or 3-4 years old with low mileage. And the prices of them have gone up so much that they're then forced into older vehicles that they either pay cash or they buy, a $10,000, $12,000 vehicle that's used. And they've got to make payments, and at the same time, when the vehicle breaks, they can't necessarily afford to repair it. So I think that is unfortunate. I think it's very unfortunate that car prices have gone up, especially in the low market. You used to be able to get a fantastic car for, if you shopped and you're lucky, you could get a pretty darn good car for $1,500, to $3,000. And now you kind of play the same gamble, but at the $10,000 to $15,000 range. It's, you know, you get a $10,000 vehicle and you're taking a gamble whether it's good or not, because those new vehicles, you know, SUVs playing in the $40,000 range makes it that by the time you can get one at $10,000, it's iffy. Okay, so unemployment rate increased to 3.7%. The labor force participation rate steady at 62.6%, and fewer people in the labor force compared to February 2022, despite adding 3.7 million more jobs. So there's the real data, and it's making it that there's more people needing lower priced vehicles, meaning I don't see lower priced vehicles going down in price anytime. So we've got different segments of the economy, but you also have different segments of vehicles. And I think it's a huge catastrophic mistake to assume, you know, to kind of blanket term automobile market. You know, you can't say that, oh, it's a buyer's market for all spectrums, or it's a seller's market for all spectrums, or don't buy any vehicles, or buy all vehicles, because there's segments of the economy and there's also segments of the you know, new and used automobile market. So the sad thing, the bad news I've got for you all tonight is things aren't going to get any easier for people who shop $10,000 and less vehicles. $10,000 and less vehicles. There's going to be continued job growth in the service industry. And there's going to be this continued tendency to not provide health care, not provide dental, to make people work 2 to 3 jobs just to be able to get by. And those people, you know, if they get sick, if they have dental or health issues, or family members that have health issues, their money goes into that. It can cause, generally, credit is lower. And because credit is lower, while they're forced into credit rating being lower, you've seen this before, they get forced into higher interest loans. So they end up getting, you know, these $10,000 vehicles with super high interest, making high monthly payments. That if the vehicle breaks, which they probably will, because unfortunately the data also shows that people are financing vehicles, used vehicles are getting financed for longer periods of time. It's going to break on you folks. Then you have to make a repair costing a couple $1,000s, a couple hundred, well, never a couple hundred these days anymore. Everything seems to be $1,000 to $3,000 to repair, and making your payment.
Yeah, and now they sell in a third chance of credit and stuff like that, 29% interest. So, and people still continue to buy. I don't know why, but people need to car to go to work.
People need work.
And sometimes it's people who just want, how can I say that, a bigger car than what they can afford.
Yes.
Sometimes we see people just don't know how to calculate and have a budget.
And that's really good advice. Calculate your budget, find out really what you can afford on a vehicle, and calculate into your budget if something goes wrong, if the vehicle breaks. So make sure that when you calculate your budget, your monthly automobile purchase doesn't bring you just level and you have an extra $100 for, you know, play money. You need to have the type of budget that says if something breaks on a $10,000 car, I recognize it's going to be, you know, $1,000 to $3,000, and I can afford that.
Yeah. And if you're on a second chance of credit, no need to buy a Porsche or a Jaguar.
Buy cash. Yeah. If you're on
buy a Hyundai Accent.
If you're on second chance or third chance credit, our biggest advice that we'll give it you is buy a vehicle cash. Take the bus if you have to. Advice. Take the bicycle if you have to. You know how I feel about cyclists. But if you're cycling to work, you're stoic, and my hat, you know, I salute you. You're doing what you can to provide for your family. But if you're second or third chance, wait several years until your credit brings you back up to like a first credit individual. So you've got a credit rating of, let's say, 600 and up. And once you're in the 600 range, you can get those lower, much lower, you know, sometimes 3 times lower interest rates from on used or new vehicles. Until then, buy cash, because you don't want to buy a $10,000 vehicle at 22% or 30% interest and end up paying it 3 times over. You don't want your $10,000 vehicle to cost you 30. thousand because you're never going to get you're never going to get to the end of that loan. The vehicle's going to break. You will be in a situation where you can't afford to pay it, and you're going to continue to make payments on a vehicle you can't drive. Or you'll just stop making payments on it, and then you'll have zero credit. And then you're back to route one where you can only pay things cash. So avoid the whole, personally, I think $10,000 vehicles, 0 to 10,000 is a great, you can still find the occasional good vehicle. You can get lucky, but pay it cash. Or have so much leftover budget that you can definitely handle that $2,000-$3,000 repair. So that's one segment of the economy, and it's one segment, one type of car purchase. It's its own segment for its own section of the economy. Then you've got, the middle class, of course, is being bled out on these new and used SUV prices because they've gone up. They're in the $40,000 range, but they continue to sell pretty well. But a lot of people are getting more towards their maximum amount, especially people who've just refinanced their house. If you've refinanced, if you've had to get back into the mortgage, redo your mortgage because it was up after its 2, 3, 5, 10-year frozen period. Very few people freeze for 10 years. Normally people take a fixed rate for, let's say, 3 or 5 years. That's the most common. And if you fixed for 3 or 5 years and you're refinancing your mortgage payment's going to go up hundreds of dollars. And I'm seeing it. New vehicles coming in and people canceling because they say, Johnny, I'm so sorry, but I can't afford that vehicle I ordered because my house is going to cost me $500 a month more. My house payment is going up by $500. That was what the extra money I was going to spend, on a, $800 a month Escape. That's what I was going to spend on the $800 or $900 a month Escape payment. I'm going to keep my old vehicle and, ride it out and hope it doesn't break because my house costs $500 more. So there's less demand in the middle class. And on the higher end of things, well, we can see it with BMW. On the higher end of things, you're kind of going for the upper middle class, lower upper class. And in that segment of the economy, things are decent enough, but there's less people up there. Because there's less people in that segment of the economy, we all know that, small and medium-sized businesses are getting gobbled up and put out of business. And those are people that would have maybe bought a nice BMW SUV or an Audi SUV. And this is why from a year ago today, a lot of restaurants closed down from the last 2-3 years. So you see BMW increasing their rebates by 233% from this time a year ago. Now in the super rich portion, well, those vehicles are just going to continue to skyrocket because very wealthy people are much wealthier than they were 30 years ago. Mind-blowingly more wealthy than they were in the 70s. And much, much wealthier even than, 10 years ago. So the very rich are very much richer than they are. So Bugattis and whatnot, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, continue to expect major price increases with those vehicles. Now, new vehicle sales rose by 23% from a year ago. And here's that will, really close up the show with saying that the market is a mixed bag. It is very hard to understand, but it's a lot easier to understand when you break it into different segments of the economy because different segments of the economy are being affected in different ways. Jobs requiring less education are being impacted worse, but technical jobs requiring technical skills, well, that's actually very much increasing segment of the population. So if you have a trade, if you're an electrician, you're a plumber, you're a construction worker with a specific trade within construction, well, your salary is going up and up. These businesses are creating bigger revenues, and truck price. What are these people buying? They're buying trucks. That's where, again, we can say trucks have gone up because for their segment of the economy and the population, well, that segment of the economy is doing extremely well. So as long as people are having things built, having things renovated, I don't expect truck prices to miraculously come crashing down. Now, rebates at Ford on the trucks, at GM, have gone down. And at Dodge, they've gone down tremendously because people really don't seem to want to buy a Dodge. Dodge, Rams, and Jeep as well. Jeep and Dodge, generally, there has been the supplies, this production went way up, but supply also came down. So they've got a lot of vehicles sitting around on yards, and dealers and manufacturers, everyone's paying interest. Metal's got to move, and when metal doesn't move, it costs everyone a lot of money. So big rebates at Dodge and Jeep, and I expect to continue to see more rebates at Dodge and Jeep as well. And I do expect to see some rebates also on the Fords that you see available. So I'm not expecting any major decrease in interest rates on the Maverick or the Bronco because we're not seeing them available. So did you catch Tom Dinder's question?
Yes, I was waiting to ask you that. It's about the order banks that will open up in 6 weeks for the Maverick and the Bronco Sport. So he wants to know if you have any update of an upcoming hybrid Bronco Sport.
None yet, and I will bring it to you as soon as I've got it. But I do have some interesting information when it comes to prices. Prices on vehicles that are available generally across the market are going to come down a little, and we're going to see it especially with the American vehicles, and that's because the American companies have been able to control production a little by finally feeding fleet sales. So the strength in May, so May was a very good month for moving metal. So the strength in May was again very much supported by fleet sales. So in 2021 and 2022, Ford, GM, Dodge didn't send that very many vehicles off to governments. Major, huge companies, what we call fleet sales. Because they wanted the few vehicles they are able to produce, they're producing them for customers. A little bit more profit in doing so, but also it's your base that really can't wait. You lose someone, a customer, if that's always bought Ford, you lose them once, you might lose them forever. Whereas pretty much everyone, all the manufacturers were telling governments and big fleet sales, well, you're just going to have to wait for your vehicles right now. So what's going on over there is 45%. Fleet sales are up 45% from a year ago. Sales into large rental fleets were up 74% from last May, and sales into commercial fleet up 20%. So while May came with a 23% increase in sales from a year ago, fleet sales, when you look at the numbers, so government fleet up 45%, rental fleet up 74%, and commercial fleet up 20%, as well as sales into government fleets up 57%. That's a lot. That is much more than actual retail. So retail people, humans, normal people, up 23% from May, and that's being supported by fleet. But at a certain point, governments, major companies are going to say, we have enough vehicles. Right now they're saying, we'll take everything you can send us. But if that chokes and slows down a little, prices are going to come down. So prices already have come down because manufacturers prefer making retail sales. It's much more profitable for them to sell to people than it is to sell, straight XL F-150s. So a regular cab, 8-foot box F-150 going off to a company or a Dodge or a GMC doesn't have a whole lot of profit in it because there's not a whole lot on the vehicle. What makes much more profit is when you sell a 4x4, 4-door, Lariat, Platinum, Limited, King Ranch, these, Laramie, these full equipped models. That's where the money is. And these manufacturers, to survive, need to balance between their fleet as well as their retail. So we're going to see prices have already come down, and we're going to see them continue to come down, but nothing dramatic. And the main piece of advice I have is if you do have a trade that's worth a good amount of money, consider trading soon. I think June, July, August all good months for trades, but I expect near the end of August, definitely either September, October, or November. And traditionally, everyone says, every YouTuber says, buy a new vehicle in December. And yes, the new vehicle is going to be a better price. But what you'll have lost on your trade, you're going to be a loser. You're going to lose a lot more trading in December because, the 5% you're going to save on that new vehicle, you're going to lose 20% on your, 10 to 20% on your trade. So that's just how things work. They want to push out their new vehicle much more. But they also don't really want your trade nearly as much as they do right now. So June or July, great time to trade. And why are there so few vehicles at auction? Well, I can tell you, when you have less new vehicles, less retail vehicles available for customers. So Ford Mavericks, there aren't any of these for sale on lots, or very, very few. Very much true for many models at many manufacturers. And the result is if a new dealer has space, they're used to having, let's say, 300 vehicles in inventory, new vehicles, and 300 used vehicles. Well, if they have 100 new vehicles in inventory, what are they going to do? They still want to make money. They're going to increase their inventory of used vehicles. So specialists, used vehicle specialists that are thinking that the market's going to come crashing down in prices because, no one must be buying new vehicles. That's not the case. The data is here. People are buying new vehicles. But dealers are keeping the trades. Instead of sending off the trades to the auction house because they say, I don't have time for that. They do have time. And we used to say, we don't have time to deal with used. And we used to also say, we don't have space to deal with used vehicles. We'd much prefer to sell new vehicles. Well, now we have space and we have time, because if you have the space, because you normally have 300 new vehicles, but now you only have 100 or 150 new vehicles. Well, you've got the space, that means you also have the time. So there you have it, folks. That's what's going on, and that's why just looking at the auction houses and thinking that there's, so fewer vehicles, used vehicles going to the auction houses, that it must mean, sales are really crummy and there's going to be this huge change in pricing because they're going to have to adjust. New manufacturers adjust their prices very quickly. I can tell you that. They can, within the same month, they can say, scrap the current plan, throw a $4,000 rebate in. We saw it in May. The F-150 went from zero rebate to $4,000 of rebate in the same month. Why did they do that? Because they saw that there wasn't enough movement. There weren't enough new sales. But there are still a lot of empty spaces on new vehicle lots. So right now we have a historic amount of used vehicles for sale because we want those used vehicles, because we have the time and we have the space to take them on. So we're not sending any vehicles to the auction houses. And because we're sending less vehicles to the auction houses, well, a lot of the people that would often go to the auction to buy their vehicles, they're coming to us directly. And they're picking them up before they even go to the auction houses. So sometimes they come around and they say, well, what have you had for sale? They go, do you have any vehicles you want to sell me? Before you prep them. And often the answer is no, we want to try to sell them. And then the next question they ask is, well, do you have any vehicles that you've been trying to sell for a while and you're not selling them? Maybe because it's not your brand. So after we try, maybe for a month or two trying to sell a Jeep at, let's say a new Ford store tries to sell a Jeep, a Mercedes, a BMW. Heck, we tried to sell a Land Rover. We sold the Land Rover. But if it doesn't sell and someone comes along and offers us money for it, it's not going to go to the auction. It's going to go to the people. So a lot of the smaller used dealers are coming to the new dealers to pick up their vehicles. They're skipping out the auction house. Now, for all of you who've been waiting for a Maverick, my heart goes out to you. It is a long wait. Marie, how long did you wait?
1 year and a half. Around that.
How many emails did you get from Ford?
Me, I didn't get zero.
No, you got zero.
Got zero.
You got zero.
I'm not sure if you got some for me, but...
So you can't double negative in English. And what we have here, I haven't gotten really any emails from Porsche, not directly from Porsche, but they do send me little magazines which I think was kind of neat. And just like how you had your Bronco off-rodeo when it came to the Bronco, and Ford paid us to go do the Bronco off-rodeo experience because we had one for sale, well, Porsche's sending us to a racetrack, and I think that's really good customer service. It's making it that a Porsche is a 3-year wait, and I got tired of waiting for the 911 because it's been a year now, so we've switched it to GTS, 718 GTS. So that's what's going on there, but we look forward to trying him out on the racetrack. Okay, so does that cover all our episodes for tonight?
I don't know if you want to do these 2 tonight.
Yes, we're going to cover in next week's live. We're going to cover how to save thousands on a Ford, but tonight we are going to do scheduling notes, so let's take care of those real quick. Scheduling notes, vehicle line scheduling plan, week of June 5th to June 9th, folks. So here's your scheduling plan. Check your emails this week if you've got an Expedition, if you got on order a 23 Ford F-150, a 23 Mach-E, so that's the electric vehicle at Ford, the electric SUV, Mustang Mach-E, but don't confuse it, not a Mustang, very much an SUV, Super Duty, or a Transit. You don't need to check your emails unless you're priority 1 or 2. If you're a priority 1 or 2, you can get scheduled at any time. But if you're a priority 10 to 19, you don't need to check your emails because they're not scheduling the Ford Bronco, Bronco Sport, Econoline, Edge, Escape, Explorer, Maverick, Medium Truck, Mustang, Ranger, Transit Connect, Van, and Wagon. And for Lincoln, no Aviator scheduling, no Corsair scheduling, no Nautilus or Navigator scheduling. However, I have seen in the past, if you're a priority 1 or 2, you got scheduled on a week where there's no Maverick scheduling, but you're a priority 1. So you got picked out. Now, am I missing any questions before we sign off for the evening?
No.
And you don't mind if we wait? Hopefully the community doesn't mind if we wait for next week to talk about how to save thousands on a Ford.
As you wish.
Yeah, we'll save that for next week, folks. We're going to cover how you can save thousands at Ford because, well, we've got kind of interesting news. You've got, X, Y, Z, all the plans coming for the Mach-E as well as the Ford F-150 Lightning. Some really cool news there. So finally some rebates on these machines. And what's more, I'll also bring some F-150 Lightning news because I had a little service vehicle soon light come up in our Lightning. But it's really cool because the Ford Pass tells me what is wrong. It says it's either A or B, so really cool. Make sure you've got Ford Pass. If you've got a Ford, that's a free. Go online and just download Ford Pass. It's free. It gives you information on your vehicle. Super helpful. So we'll talk more about that next week. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We good for questions for the evening?
Yeah.
Take care, everybody. Until next time, we wish you all more cars and more power. Take care, folks.
Bye.